in 99. And from there, I started building up businesses. That was one business. Then in 2003, I tied up with an American company for conditional-based monitoring systems. Again, still in India, I can say that we were doing IoT then. Now people talk about IoT, so we were doing then IoT. This business is very close to my heart, and I can proudly say that we monitors India's 100% missile systems, Chandrayaan, Mangalyaan, you name it, any kind of defense equipment which moves from point A to point B, while not in attack, but while they are stored. So that's what we do. ATM machines, power transformers, exclusively. We work very closely with ISRO and defense establishment. In 2013, when everything was easy peasy, unfortunate incident of Nirbhaya rape case made us realize that safety is important. So, and e-commerce was blooming. So we started safetycart.com, which was India's first e-commerce venture into safety products. And during that year only, PSafe got born. When Srijana, my wife, suffered from UTI in one of the travels, then we realized that 200 million women suffer from UTI every year, and there was no such product which actually can minimize the risk of UTI from public washrooms. And to our surprise, there was no product called toilet seat sanitizer spray in the world, and I'll say that it was a discovery, not an invention. So we just converted a sanitizer, a hand sanitizer, into a bottle, into a gas, into an aerosol form where you don't touch any of the surface. So it was more of a surface disinfectant, but we name it as a toilet seat sanitizer spray. Took me 3.5 years to sell 100,000 units. And at one point of time, it was so bad because I was not raising money. I went out to sell the brand. I was not getting even 50 lakh rupees for PSafe in early 2017. And then somebody told me, and we went out and we formed a new company. And Apurva came in, Apurva from VCATS, and he said, hey, you know what, can I help you and raise some angel funding? I said, okay, let's go and try, because nobody's giving me 50 lakh rupees for the brand. But I think VCATS helped me in raising funds. So within 3 months, we raised a 3.5 crores at a valuation of 12 crores. So in 6 months, from 50 lakhs, the company was valuing at 12 crores. And then rest is history. From there till now, we are now present in more than 90 cities in India, 8,000 stores, 10 countries. And we have been working on each and every single day of COVID and selling sanitizers, masks, disinfectants, you name it. So I think PSafe is there to stay. Unfortunately, COVID-19 realized that hygiene is important. So we have an organic tailwind for us right now. And I wish that everyone takes their hygiene seriously and be safe. Apart from this, I had been an angel investor for the last 5 years so far. Good couple of exits, I think 4 exits. 10 startups went down, but I'm still invested in around more than 20. So life is good. My mantra is don't celebrate funding, celebrate exit. So I always tell this to my my portfolio companies as well as myself, that funding is the most expensive debt you can take. So always celebrate when you exit, because this is when you make money. This is about me.
That was wonderful, Vikas. Thank you so much. I think from monitoring all the missiles in Chandrayaan to building PSafe, that's quite a journey. Wonderful. For all the participants, just very quick kind of thoughts. If you have any questions, you can put it on the question and answer. You have it on your dashboard. Also, towards the end of the session, we would have a live Q&A where you can raise your hand. There's a feature called Raise Hand, and then we would be able to give you access to ask the questions live. Thank you, Vikas. That was wonderful. Moving on to Karan. Karan, requesting you to kindly share your entrepreneurial journey with us and then talk to us about Pariksha, what Pariksha is trying to do, and what you see EdTech as an opportunity, especially during the COVID-19 scenario. Karan. You are on mute, Karan. Please unmute yourself.
So thank you so much, Ravi. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I'm an excellent entrepreneur. Nobody in my family is in business. Everybody's in the armed forces. So my father keeps calling me black sheep of the family because he wanted me to join forces and I became an entrepreneur. So I remember one fine day I was sitting with my father and he said, business baniyon ka kaam hai. One is I'm a cantonment kid. Second is I'm a Rajput. So he said Rajputon ko aur Faujiyon ko business karna nahi aata. So think about it. But he was kind enough to allow me to pursue my dream. The reason why I call myself accidental entrepreneur is because I remember I was preparing for civil services when the idea of a business came to my mind. I was living here in Pune and I could not find good books to prepare for civil services. And I thought, if I'm facing the problem, I'm sure other people must be also facing the same problem. So that's when the entire idea happened, and I started working on an idea called the Learning Mantra, which was later on sold. So that's how I became an entrepreneur. Been part of the startup ecosystem for a while now. Did 4 companies. Out of these 4 companies, 2 kind of gave me a successful exit. Post that, I joined a venture capital fund called Stern Fisher, which is an Israeli fund. And I met my co-founders of Pariksha at IIM Ahmedabad. I was invited by IIM Ahmedabad to judge their annual business plan competition called Master Plan. And my co-founders, they were representing IIT Kanpur there. So I was fortunately also appointed their mentor. So it was kind of love at first sight, because when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I was exactly like them. No idea about how to do business. Forget about business. I had no idea about, what all technologies are required to build a website. So, but there was a lot of fire in their belly. So I could relate with them, and that's how we came together. And in 2015, we incorporated the company. And Pariksha is an education technology company, and we primarily focus at the state government job exams. So we also have a very close relationship with West Bengal. Some of my very close friends are from Calcutta, and we have launched one of our highest subscription package in West Bengal, priced at 25,000 rupees. So nobody would earlier buy this theory that you can charge somebody living in some remote village 25,000 rupees for an online test prep. But that's a reality today. Pariksha is growing. We raised a couple of rounds of capital. I came in touch with Apur because I'd known Apur for a very, very long time. He was with Indian Angels Network when I came in contact with him for the first time. He was kind enough to allow us to come onto his platform. We raised an investment at a fairly good valuation. We did at a pre-money valuation of around 29 crores. We raised around 4 crores with them from Apur and the INSEAD Angel Network that recently invested in our company. Currently, today, Pariksha is growing. We are present in 11 states, starting from Himachal Pradesh at the top to Tamil Nadu at the bottom. We have close to 2 million users, and out of them, 65,000 are paid subscribers. So that's our brief journey. Right now, we are raising our next round of investment. There are a couple of VCs who have shown interest. So the prospects for EdTech, they have suddenly grown many folds after the coronavirus. Coronavirus, very horrible in nature, but fortunately for education technology companies, it has created the same opportunity that probably demonetization created for companies like Paytm. So today schools are shut, colleges are shut, coaching institutes are shut, everybody is going online. So I think it has happened for the first time that institutions like Harvard, Stanford, Yale, INSEAD, all of them are going online. So if you look at education, education is a business which was primarily run by traditional mindsets, very, very traditional mindsets, politicians or old business houses. And they were always averse to adopting technology simply because they could not understand technology. But today, I think the environment has forced them to adopt technology. And today they realize that, using technology, you can probably deliver the same or even in some cases better experience. So I think the education technology companies, they have a very bright future, not just here in India, but across the globe. It is among those few companies, few opportunities in the business world, which has been positively impacted because of the corona, other being hygiene that Vikas talked about, collaboration, communication being the others, uh, entertainment, gaming are some of the other industries that are positively impacted. So happy to be here. Love to share more about our journey and our experiences with you. Thank you, Ravi.
Thanks a lot, Karan. Thank you so much. Harsh, requesting you to kindly share your story as an entrepreneur and also about Find.
Sure. Hey guys, great to be here. I think we're one of the companies which have been very, very negatively affected by coronavirus. I think in the retail sector, especially for Find, we deal with footwear, accessories, and fashion and lifestyle. None of these are essential. And I think that's something which has got our business down to absolute zero ever since the lockdown started. I think while that is more sort of closer to recent events. I started the company 8 years ago with two other friends. The idea and the thought process behind Find was that retailers' use of technology was not up to the mark for the consumers who were walking into their stores. So while consumers had adopted technology at a very, very fast pace, retailers were still far behind. And, we peg that number close to about 10 to 12 years behind the consumer in terms of adoption of technology. And that had a significant impact in the way retailers were engaging customers inside the store. And I think as e-commerce started booming around, of course, in India, it was more discount driven than anything else, but retailers found themselves, stuck in an age which consumers had well sort of surpassed or even leapfrogged. So I think that's where Find came into place with the help that, offline retail will never go away. I think that will still be a fairly large component of a consumer's shopping experience. But with the right technology in the store, I think retailers can make themselves more relevant to consumers, and also use that technology for the stores to become a part of the online shopping revolution. So we're an omni-channel platform in the sense that we work with traditional brick and mortar retail stores, and these are malls, high street stores, local stores, to get them integrated into e-commerce, either through their own website, through marketplaces, through find.com, through supply chains of other brands, or through other distribution channels. We work with about 500 brands. So if you were to walk into, say, South City Mall in Calcutta, I would say about 50% of the stores would be sort of enabled by Find, in the way that the store is now discoverable online across Myntra, Amazon, Flipkart, Tata Click, their own website, and so on and so forth. Over the last 8 years, we've had multiple rounds of funding. Our first round of funding came through K Capital. A second round of funding came through K Capital again, along with a few investors like Kunal Bell, Rohit Bansal. A third round of funding came in through IIFL, and that's the round in which even Venture Catalyst participated in that round. A fourth round of funding came through Google, and the fifth round of funding, which was a mix of both secondary and primary, was through Reliance. And this is RIL that invested in the company, with the view that I think going ahead, retail is going to be driven more by omni-channel than by any one particular channel. And I think the culmination of offline and online is something that is going to define the way retail will work going ahead. Of course, because we work primarily with fashion stores and more offline stores, all of those are shut right now. So as a business, we're sort of down to zero. But we've been able to do some sort of pre-booking where you place your orders, and the moment things are back on, we will ship them to you. Happy to talk about any sort of hit that the retail industry is taking right now. Fundraising during the last 8 years through multiple rounds. We've got investors, from angel investors to institutional investors to companies globally as well as India. Happy to talk about any of those things.
Thanks a lot, Harsh. I think while we can definitely talk about COVID-19, but unfortunately, we do not have any control over the current scenario. So I would rather like to have the discussion focused more around building a venture, scaling up, and all the other aspects. So I think I would like to start first with Harsh. Harsh, in a crowded market, already crowded e-commerce segment where you had so many players, what was the inspiration behind building Find, and how were you able to kind of convince your first investor that, listen, we are not just trying to copy paste, we are actually trying to do something else? Because a lot of times, I'm sure a lot of participants who are live right now, they might have the same question in their mind, that how to create a very good differentiator. So if you can help us on that, Harsh.
Sure. So I think, first things first, I think Find is more a pivot story. I think when we started the company in 2012, when we got the first investors on board, which was K Capital, I think the focus was to build technology for the retail store in order to drive better customer engagement. We ran that for about 2.5 to about 3 years. In 2015, we pivoted to Find. I think at that time, having the belief of our existing investors was definitely very, very critical in helping us navigate through the pivot. I think the second thing which was interesting is that even as we were serving the retail sector from a technology perspective, we were always able to get some of the best brands in the country to work with us. So there was some amount of track record that we had built, that we were using technology to actually get these stores better. And I think the third is, while a lot of e-commerce was run through discount driven inventory models, I think what Find actually brought to the table was to actually connect the local stores, or the physical stores, to the e-commerce market, right? So I think fundamentally the way Amazon and Flipkart or Myntra or Jabong at that time had built their businesses was a more sort of centralized supply chain, where you would go around buying stock from all these brands which are not able to sell in their stores, and buying the liquidation stock and trying to discount it at 30-40% and selling it to consumers and shipping from their warehouses. So the differentiator that sort of Find brought in was the fact that we would connect to the physical stores, which means that the consumer could get access to actual fresh fashion which was in the store right now. And second is, because it was getting delivered from the store, we were able to actually deliver on the same day or the next day. So while a lot of capital has gone into creating same day delivery for the likes of Amazon Prime and Flipkart and Myntra, I think the basis of the model that Find was built on, it was automatically enabled for same day delivery as well as next day delivery. So I think those two things played a big role. Of course, e-commerce in India was predominantly discount driven, so it's not as the consumers valued a lot of fresh fashion or faster delivery as the primary reason of buying. And hence for Find, e-commerce was always and also ran. A large part of our business, which is 80% of our business, actually comes through the omni-channel technology that we provide to the brands. So Find.com as an e-commerce website contributes to about 13% of our business today. I think 87% of our business today comes predominantly by the use of technology and technology-enabled services that we would work with brands in order to link up their stores to other e-commerce platforms or the brand's own website, or even inside the store. So I think for us, the play is more a technology play as opposed to a commerce play. And I think that differentiator, which said that today even a Myntra can become omni-channel by working with Find and hence Find's brands. I think that was a big differentiator in our subsequent rounds of funding that was there. So I think we realized that e-commerce is a burning game, and I don't think there was capital and available in the market in order to fund an e-commerce company. I think technology-enabled businesses were very, very different at that time. So I think even today, there are not too many players that do the work that we do, because there's a lot of effort that goes into integrating with different inventory systems across multiple retailers, and further integrating them with demand channels, and also managing logistics for them.
Thanks a lot, Harsh. I think that was wonderful. I would now like to request Vikas to share, Vikas, your thoughts as a serial entrepreneur. A lot of people are building ventures in various segments, but when you look at a segment which is as niche as personal hygiene, I mean, in India, if we talk 5 years ago, it was not something which people actually wanted, while it was required. Similarly, today, entrepreneurs might have a lot of verticals where they are working on, and it might be, let's say, 2 years in the future, not relevant for today. So that's my first question. If you're building something for the future, how do you plan it and how do you present it? Number one. Number two, when you go to raise capital for a company which might not be an application or not a software, is angel investment or VC funding only the option, or you can look at some of the traditional funding options as well, or maybe look at debt as an option? Vikas.
Right. Thanks for the questions. I'll take your first question, and I want to answer this. I have been building businesses right from 97, when the word startup was not there. पहले यही बोलता था धंधा करने जा रहे हैं, पैसे कमाने जा रहे हैं. Now startup means that we need to burn money, right? And all my businesses are running, right? Just for your information, that I have not exited from any of my businesses. Those are all professionally managed and run by professional CEOs. It's just that my complete focus is on PSAFE. So I'll give you two examples. And all my businesses into niche. So when I talk about conditional based monitoring systems, way back in 2002, it was machine to machine communication using radio frequency, and now we are using IoT. It was ahead of its time. So we had product which actually can tell you conceal damages of any product which is moved from point A to point B. I think Ravi, you know about it, and I spoke to you about this, that when I started this business, and this actually lead to the answer to your question. In 2002, leaving aside my current business of material handling equipment, it took me 6 months. There was not a single sales, right? Because it was more towards going to the B2B companies and presenting your product so that they can start using in their channel of distribution or in their packaging. 12 months passed, not a single invoice raised, right? And the family, friends started talking about it. Why don't you go back to your own business again? Why you are trying it? It's more of a startup, right? I was doing that, but I saw because this was a joint venture. The product was manufactured in US, and I was bringing it into India. India was not ready to it. India was just coming out of the dot-com burst. The manufacturing was started to happen. So I realized that India will definitely go up to that level where we, apart from services, we definitely go into manufacturing. So I kept on going. My dad started saying that, okay, let's forget it. Let's go back to your businesses. 15th month, again, no invoice. Not a single money I have able to bill by 15 months. तब बीवी ने आके बोला, बस अब 3 महीना का टाइम है, कुछ करते हैं तो कर लो, otherwise you have to shut it down. I think that 3 months I really put 100%, and I got an order after 18th month of $20, which was from Pondicherry, and our product was so fragile that you cannot ship it, so you have to hand carry it, and you cannot take it in cabin baggage in the plane. So I took a 36 hours journey to Chennai, delivered it, and came back. As soon as I came back, I got a call that they need another $20 of stuff. I did that journey again. In 7 days, I did a journey twice to Chennai to deliver it. You know what? To build a business, you have to believe in yourself. Number one. Number two, I believe that if you have started something, you have to take it to the last and finish it. I think that's the reason that when I started Safety Cart, and when people say safety in India, are you sure? And believe me, it never sold. It never sold. I couldn't sell any safety products for good 5 years when I went online. So we were selling, child safety, home safety, sports safety, office safety, travel safety. लोग को इंडिया में क्या चाहिए यार, मेरे को क्या हो सकता है? They will have that नींबू और मिर्ची टांग लेंगे and safety हो गया. So yeah, that leads to the mindset in India that safety, we don't need it. The thing happened with hygiene. Till now, people believe why we need a hand sanitizer, why we need a disinfectant, why we need a toilet seat sanitizer. I'll squat and pee. I don't want to wash my hand. So all these things of stuff which actually changed when your life is threatened, right? So I think to answer your question again, one has to believe what they have started. They have to see what's there in the future. You never know when your time will come, and I think just stick to it. And that is how I think I'm able to build businesses which has always been into niche. So this is about your first. And just to repeat your second question, Ravi, please again.
My second question was, when you're raising capital for a product which might not be, let's say, a software or an application or something which is not exciting enough, should you just wait for angel or VC funding, or should you look at traditional funding and other funding options as well?
So, I won't give an example of PSafe here. I'll give you an example of my other businesses like Safety Cart. The Safety Cart was, I started as an e-commerce platform, but I pivoted into a B2B model where we were doing child safety proofing for play schools. So we are still India's #1 company who does child proofing for play schools and homes. So when we built up this business, we went to angel investors. It was difficult because angel investment will come only in your organization if they think there will be a more funding which will come and they'll get a chance to exit through secondary sales, or there will be an acquisition. So if you are building a non-tech companies, I think debt is surely a very good option if you can get collateral free, because of course you don't want to mortgage your home and do a business right now. This is not the time. But if that debt cost can be paid by your gross margin, I think that's a very good idea to do it. But again, it's difficult to get debt from anyone and everyone. That's the challenge, which a different debate. But yes, I can ask that let's go to the traditional way of funding. If you can if you can get a bit of traditional way of funding, or you can fund from yourself or from your family, because that's the most difficult part to raise funding. I think it's easy to raise from VC or angel investor, but to raise funding from your friends and family where you live with them, if you are really, concerned about your honor, definitely you want to work and you want to pay them back. So yes, there's no harm, and we should try if we can, if our margins are good and if you're not burning money. I think all type of funding are invited, and they should be taken up.
Wonderful.
I hope to answer your
Yeah,
question.
definitely. That was on the mark. Next question is to Karan. Two questions, Karan. Number one, I remember during your initial pitch, you spoke about your co-founder traveling to a new city, and he took an auto rickshaw ride, and it was very interesting to see that story, that the auto rickshaw driver was actually learning on Pariksha app, and your co-founder was not aware about this auto rickshaw driver, but eventually he told that I'm learning, I'm preparing for an exam while I'm driving auto rickshaw. I think stories like this inspire you and me and everyone around. So number one question to you, when I'm building a new product and I need to go to market, how do I define my go to market strategy? Should I stick to the rule book, or should I create my own rules depending on what my product is? Number one. Number two, when you're building an online product, which is a complete product experience, how do you ensure ROI? Which means that if you are spending a lot of money on getting new customers to download your app, how do you measure that, and how do you measure which segments are working well for you? So these two questions to you, Karan.
Thank you, Ravi. So I think good stories, they sell everywhere, right? And all entrepreneurs, we are first in the business of selling stories, right? We sell stories to our co-founders, we sell stories to our early investors, we sell stories to customers, angel investors, and then gradually to even VCs, and probably someday to a big corporation that might look at acquiring you. So telling story is, I think, one of the most important skills to be in the startup business. And that story that I shared with you was my co-founder Vikram was taking auto rickshaw ride in Indore, and the auto rickshaw guy and Vikram started talking, and the auto rickshaw guy asked him, "Sir, where do you work?" And Vikram told him that I work at Pariksha. The auto rickshaw guy immediately took out his phone and said, "Is this your app?" So Vikram said, "Yes." He said, "I'm using your app to prepare for the constable exam." He said, "I drive auto rickshaw in a very small city like Indore, where sometimes there is a waiting period of half an hour to 1 hour. Now, practically, it is not possible for me to keep books in my auto rickshaw, but now thanks to your app, I can take it out anytime whenever there's a waiting period, and I can start preparing for the constable exam." So I think in every presentation of mine, every VC pitch of mine, I use that slide, and that one particular slide. So we can also click the photograph with the auto rickshaw driver, thankfully. So I use that one photograph, and I think that one photograph talks about everything that we stand for and everything that we do. So this was so. Whether it is the investors or whether it is your consumers, you are selling them a story. So the stories that we sold to our users was that till yesterday, 90% of our target market was preparing for these competitive exams using books. Because if you look at the state government job exam market, out of the 75 million people who prepare for the state government job exam every year, only 10%, the affluent ones, are able to go to a brick and mortar coaching institute. And there are three reasons. First is that these good brick and mortar coaching institutes are concentrated in 3 to 4 major cities in every state. If I have to give you example of Madhya Pradesh, it will be Gwalior, Indore, Jabalpur, and Bhopal. If I have to give you example of Maharashtra, it will be Pune, Nagpur, Nasik, Aurangabad, and a little bit of Thane. So anybody who's not from these 4 cities, if they have to take coaching, then they have to migrate to a city, pay for the fees of the coaching institute, and also pay for their lodging and boarding. Not everybody from Bharat can afford that kind of price point. Second is the opportunity cost. Everybody in villages is doing some or the other thing. So it is not possible for them to leave their day job and migrate to a city just for 3 to 4 months to take coaching. So these 90% were buying these books, spending anywhere from 1,500 rupees to 2,500 rupees to prepare for the state government exams. So another interesting thing that I wish to share with you is that if you look at Bharat, government jobs are the most aspirational jobs. There's a fierce competition, and there is a huge interest from everybody to secure a government job. It is a matter of prestige and sense of security for them. They know that if they migrate to a city like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Calcutta, majority of them, because of the low skill set and communication challenge, they'll end up becoming a Ola Uber driver or chowkidars, or they'll have to work in restaurants. So for them, a good life means to secure a government job within their state, and if possible within their district, which could give them a good life. So the selection rate is always less than 1% for any government job in our country. That's the fierceness of competition. I was talking to a VC sometime back, and I said it is easier to get into Harvard, where the selection rate is between 10 to 12%. It is easier to get into IITs, where the selection rate is between 1.3 to 1.4%. And Harsh would back me on this. But it is difficult to become a constable in our country, where the selection rate is 0.6%. So the story that we sold to them is that probably at the same price point that you're spending today by buying these books, I can deliver you a much better experience over this mobile app, which is interactive, which connects you with the entire ecosystem, where you can look at your strength, weakness, opportunity, strength, weakness, and accuracy and speed. Here you have video on demand, you have live streaming classes, so a much better experience. So if you cannot visit a coaching institute, I can bring coaching institute to your doorstep through this mobile phone. So in a sense, we are doing exactly the same thing that probably Harsh is doing with these retail outlets. He's bringing them on board and empowering them with the technology. We are doing exactly the same thing. We are partnering these brick and mortar coaching institutes and empowering them with our technology. Now, as far as your second question is concerned about the ROI, I don't think so. Again, to add to the early one, so I don't think there is one story. You have to have different stories. Each entrepreneur will have a different story for their market, and there is no one rule. All entrepreneurs, we all entrepreneurs are on the path of discovery, if I could say that. And each path is a very unique path, and each story is a very unique story. Though there are always learning from other entrepreneurs, but your story is your story. Your path is your path. Now, coming on to the ROI thing, I think one of the mistakes that most of the entrepreneurs make is that the moment they raise capital, they think that now they can spend that money on acquiring users and customers, and that's what we have seen. So, unfortunately, capital is a sign of success. I'll go with what Vikas earlier said: is only the validation of your idea. It is probably the validation of the founder's ability to sell. That's it, nothing beyond than that. The real sign of success of any business is when you are EBITDA positive, or when you have a large corporation like maybe Reliance acquiring your business. So these are the only two signs of success. So majority of entrepreneurs, when they raise capital, they start spending money left, right, and center to acquire users and customers. They do not look at the revenue. I think mature entrepreneurs, they would try to strike a very fine balance between growth and revenue, and that's what we have been trying to do. So even in these tough times, when other education institutions have stopped selling their courses online, whether it is Unacademy, whether it is Byju's, Pariksha is still selling. We are selling it at a 50% discount, but we are still selling. So what it essentially does is that it gives a very good impression to the investor community that these are entrepreneurs who can even sell in tough time. And today, I think most VCs, they do not look at the other vanity metrics, like your daily active users, your monthly active users, your total subscriber base. What majority of them have started looking at is your revenues. So if you could do that, I do not think you'll have to chase VCs. There will be a lot of VCs who will be chasing you. So my suggestion to the investor, to the entrepreneur community would be to build the business for their consumers, to focus on their revenues and strike a right balance between growth and revenue. Think of innovative ways to acquire users. One of the stories that I wish to share with you is that Pariksha's marketing budget in any given month is not more than 3 lakh rupees. Now, I'm sure that would come as a surprise to you. We are present in 11 states, and we are talking about a 3 lakh rupee a month marketing budget. But having said that, it does not mean that the marketing activities that we are doing is any less. We try to find out innovative ways where we do not have to spend money. For one of the things that we are doing is on YouTube, where we do affiliate marketing. So we have partnered with a lot of YouTube influencers. And the deal is that they have to promote us. And if we make any sale because of the promotion, we share a part of our revenue. Second is you have to understand your market really well. So Pariksha's team is feet on street. We sweat under the sun. We build physical partnerships. It is very important for you to understand your market in depth. Only then you can come up with these tactics, if I may call them. In Bharat, what we realized was that meme marketing was very, very popular. So what a meme marketing means is that you pick up any popular scene from any movie and you paste your own dialogues and you throw that content in the world, in the social media. So one example where we were very, very successful was that I'm sure you must have seen very, very, very iconic movie called Diwar, where you have Amitabh Bachchan, Shashi Kapoor talking. So we use the same scene and I'm sure you all remember that iconic dialogue कि मेरे पास घर है गाड़ी है बंगला तुम्हारे पास क्या है, और शशि कपूर कहता है मेरे पास माँ है. So we use the same dialogue and we pasted our own content or dialogue on that scene, wherein one student is saying that I have books, notes and coaching institute, and the other student says मेरे पास परीक्षा है. That meme went viral and we started getting app downloads for 76 paisa. Now 76 paisa, which is less than a cent, a download for 76 paisa is kind of unheard of in India. So today also our user acquisition cost is between 1 to 2 rupees and our customer acquisition cost is around 65 rupees, which is one of the lowest in the edtech space. And I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to attract a lot of good investors. And today also there's a huge interest in the investor community. So you have to understand your market real well. No consultant, no one outside, not even VCs can tell you more about your market than you would understand. And each entrepreneur will have a different story because each entrepreneur's path is very, very unique. I hope I answered your question, Ravi.
Yeah, Karan, I think that was wonderful with a lot of story, lot of insight, lot of wonderful stuff. Thank you so much. My next question is to Harsh. Harsh, two-part question. First part is when you were raising capital for Find, how easy or difficult it was, and second part is that during COVID-19, post-COVID-19, a lot of things are going to change. Number one, the new FDI update is going to be very, very tricky because Chinese investment would have a difficult time. While there is a good news that a lot of US funds might want to invest in Southeast Asian and Asian countries, which includes India as a hotspot, but that might take a while. So for companies which are first kind of companies which are at an early stage, where trying to raise the first check, how difficult it is going to be and what should they do? Second, companies which are now raising, let's say, second or third round, what should be their strategy? Harsh.
Okay, so I think if I look back at my journey of raising funds, I think our first round back in 2012, end of 2012, was actually supremely easy. It was just one meeting, first investor, he said yes, and I think a lot had to do with the fact that there was some amount of connection historically that we see, plus the fact that we got introduced through other startups and founders of other startups who had done well. So I think that was supremely easy. Second and third rounds were actually very, very difficult. As you also mentioned, going up against larger e-commerce companies which were very well funded. I think it definitely did play a big role in us having to do a lot to actually get a second and third round of funding. I think the pivot was definitely tough in the sense that we were lucky that our existing investor only was actually leading the round for the pivot. It's actually showcased the fact that they're willing to continuously bet more on the team. I mean, to an extent where I think their very first round that they had done was about 200K. And when we did the pivot, they actually put in 800K in the pivot. So I think they ended up putting 4x the amount of funding in a company which is changing its direction. But I think that signaled to the other investors on how trusting they were in our potential and our capability. I think post that, it was always tough as an e-commerce company raising a round of funding. But I think when we did pivot to we again pivoted again to a more omni-channel technology company, I think it became slightly easier. I think it's because of the fact that we realized that we were doing something which was a very difficult job in terms of integrating with so many stores all across the country, and I think inherently there was a lot of strategic value in the work that we were doing. So even though the business top line wasn't as good, the fact that we were integrating and have access to real-time inventory of about 10,000 stores across 400 brands, that was, I think, very, very useful. I think both Google and Reliance inherently saw the strategic value in having those stores integrated with us. So I think that became fairly easy for us. Having said that, at the time of the secondary exit, we had about 86 people on a cap table. So it's a fairly long list of people that were there. But I think, we were able to get enough people to believe in us. It was definitely, difficult to, make the rounds of, everyone to actually get to 86, which means I would have spoken to probably, 300 to actually get to that 86 number in a best case scenario. But I think when you know that there's something that you're doing in terms of solving a tough problem. I think, as even Karan said, investors come to you, and I think that's how both the Google round and the Reliance round happened. We were now not in the market to raise capital, but I think both of them approached us saying that, hey, we recognize the work that you're doing. We recognize the fact that probably top line isn't as big as some of the other e-commerce companies, but we understand the inherent value of the pipelines that you've built between the physical retailers and the e-commerce world, and we would like to partner with you. So even though people talk about how Reliance has acquired the company, that's actually not true. Reliance is a majority investor in the company, but we as founders, as the team, still hold our majority stake in the still hold our majority stake that used to be there. We still are majorly invested in the company, and it's not an exit for us at all. It's an exit for my previous investors. Reliance has taken a majority stake, but we still believe that there's a lot more that we can do with this. Coming to your second part of the question, which is post-COVID, I think yes, it's going to be very tough. I don't see major issues coming at the angel or the seed level, because I think everyone who invests at that juncture is anyways investing in without any business, without any proof points, purely on the idea, size of market, and on the capability of the founder. And I think everyone understands that there's a 7 to 10 year cycle for that investment. So I haven't seen I've seen slowdowns happening, but I haven't seen deals not happening at the seed level. I think, of course, Series B, C, D have become tougher, because the trajectory that businesses would have to maintain in order to get the kind of investors that they would want to attract has become tough. Apart from probably tech, hygiene, healthcare, those spaces have definitely got significant trajectory. But in the other sectors, I definitely see a big issue coming in. And definitely, I think Chinese investors, at least in the last couple of years, were very, very active in the Indian startup ecosystem. And I think the non-automatic route for FDI for those investors definitely is a procedural hurdle. However, I would think that from a startup perspective, it is purely a procedural hurdle. Given the right sort of controls and compliances, I think those hurdles are sort of surmountable. But yes, it will add to an overall negative sentiment for Chinese investors wanting to invest in the country. What I would say is that if you are in the top few companies in your space, and by top few, it's not just with respect to traction and consumers, but also with respect to unit economics and revenue models. I would still assume that investors would look at you. Maybe you might not get the same valuations that you would have got pre-COVID-19, but definitely there will be a lot of interest. And I think investors also, if you look at VC funds, everyone's raised a new fund in the last 2 to 2.5 years. So I think that capital is also there for them to deploy. And I think right now they believe that it'll be the right value for them to actually enter into those spaces. And I think technology and online businesses has actually got a much larger boost, because as consumers have started consuming things, a lot of things online, not just entertainment, but also commerce and education online. And I think that's going to be something which will continue even post the COVID world. So I would say that there is a mixed bag. There's definitely going to be some amount of caution, but I think overall, I think it's going to be in the medium term, it's going to be a positive, especially for online businesses, I would say.
Thanks a lot, Harsh. I think that was wonderful. But that brings me to the next question. And this question goes for all three of you, starting with Vikas. Vikas, so there's two-part question. Number one is that we know that some of the verticals are going to be very good. For example, from 10 million daily active users to 300 daily active users for Zoom in just 2 months. I think it's a Paytm moment for Zoom as well. But not everyone is I would say lucky. I mean, if I'm building something into retail or FMCG, I cannot quickly go and pivot into edtech or online commerce. So what do I do in this scenario? Number two, if I'm into a scenario where, for example, I'm into online segment where I'm doing hyperlocal delivery, should I be a little cautious, conserve cash, or go all in because I have this huge opportunity to scale? Because
Yeah. If you are in a business and that has taken hit, uh, and if you have a resource or bandwidth to do something with the same team, my suggestion will be to do that. So I've seen many of my friends and families, they have spare capacity where the exports has been hit, and they were into fabric and the fashion stores. So what they have done is they've taken a proper approvals and certification, and they've gone into the PPE kits and the mask manufacturing, because they have the resource, they have the raw material, they have the know-how. But will they continue with this business? No way. They are just try to manage their cash flows till the time we have a solution in terms of be it a vaccine or something like that. See, world has always rebounded. You name it, we have always rebounded, and I'm sure in a 12 to 15 month time, it will be a V-shaped recovery for the world, and India will be standing far ahead of a lot of many economy around the world. So I think stay there what you have been doing. If you have a spare capacity, try to look into that and be into a current business, or take some consignment if it's possible, because there are a lot of job will be available. Though I know that there are a lot of jobs has been sacked as well, but there are a lot of jobs will be available for skilled workers, for someone who are really good in something or who know how to build up businesses when the chips were down. So this is my suggestion. Regarding the second thing, again, sorry, I was not paying attention to your second question. I'm so sorry once again, Ravi. Uh,
no, that's all right. I think my second question was that companies which are into segment, for example, PSafe, which are into essential verticals, should I conserve cash or go all in because this is a good opportunity for me?
okay, so you have taken a wrong example actually. So PSF is we are having a Paytm moment. So we are not selling anything on cash. It's so sorry, anything on credit. It's all cash. We are making people stand in queue because we don't have that much of supplies. But yes, if a company who has an opportunity like a hyperlocal model, which you asked, yes, I remember your question now. I think cash should be there. You should not go all out, because we never know if the lockdown is gonna extend, or how the lockdown how the exit will come. Will be having a little bit of a control environment or a containment. So I think it will be a mix of both. If you can, if and believe me, Ravi, a lot of dry powders are available. A lot of funds are available who are ready to fund industry who can help in COVID. And if you have a solution to it, I think you should go all out. But if you are not sure that how long you can work, then you should conserve cash. And for the startup who are looking to raise fund, I'll say that try to see that you have a runway of at least 12 months to 15 months, because then you will be in a better position to negotiate with your investors, rather than shelling out the valuation. But believe me, you have to be ready to to offer 20 to 30% discount on the valuation which you are thinking in February this year, during the COVID or post-COVID. So yes, conserve cash, but if you have an opportunity, do pivot, do go and look for businesses which you can do right now. And I think this is a temporary phenomena. Stay there, stay invested. I know it's difficult to say, being there in a good position right now, unfortunately. But yes, I think this is what I can say right now.
Thanks a lot, Vikas. I think I remember one very interesting story from Brian Chesky when he was working on Airbnb and things were not going well for them. At that point of time, Barack Obama was campaigning for president elections, and they actually went ahead and they created a new cereal brand like cornflakes with Barack Obama picture on the board, and they sold thousands of boxes, and that served as a seed money for them. So I think that's what we can look at right now. But yeah, definitely, if you're in the vertical and if you have the team which can pivot very quickly into a segment which can become very good and essential product for you, which can give you a credit line or give you a new revenue stream, I think nothing wrong in that. Karan, your quick thoughts on this. We have to wrap up as well quickly, so we'll take this very quickly and then take some questions. Karan. Again on mute, Karan.
Yeah, so I completely agree with what Vikas has said. So in the first week of lockdown, even we saw a lot of turmoil because there was a lot of uncertainty. So even our users were in a very confused state of mind. So we saw our traffic going down, and we thought, probably the company will go down if our users leave us. So the four co-founders, we sat together and we started thinking, what more can we do? And suddenly we saw that if this is a lockdown, that means all education institutions across the country, whether it is schools, coaching institutes, or colleges, all of them would be shut. They already have taken money from students. So either students will start asking for their money back, or there'll be on the other side, there'll be a negative impact on their learning. So we thought, why not reach out to these large brick and mortar coaching institutes and education institutions who are looking at business continuity on the one side, and on the learning continuity for the students on the other side. And that's what we did. We immediately reached out to some large coaching institutes who were in fact waiting for somebody like us to come and save them. So we offered them our technology. So it is a different use case. Pariksha is primarily a B2C company, but in these tough times, we have opened up platform for other players to come and start offering their classes online. So very proud to say that some of the largest coaching institutes from Kota, like Bansals of Kota and Motions of Kota, now they are on Pariksha. That is not a core focus area, but that certainly has added a new revenue line for us. In these tough times, we are still generating revenue. It has increased our runway. And again, it conveys a very good signal to the investor community that even in these tough times, these founders know how to make money. So yes, if you could find and if you're acting your core business, should make some money, please do that.
Thanks a lot, Karan. Thanks a lot, Harsh. Very quick thoughts on from you on the same topic.
I think I would say that I can do what we did at Find. I think we took stock of the fact that yes, I don't think there will be much business that be doing on retail right now. We tried doing and we're still doing pre-booking of sorts where you can get delivery once everything is over. But we didn't try and get into any hyper local, even though we thought that we have a shopping app, we can onboard guys, because we believe that I think one of the things that we need to stay true to is what our brand means to at least our suppliers and our clients, which are the retailers. And I think the amount of effort that we would have taken in order to very quickly try and put something up and run it from an operational perspective, we weren't very sure whether we would continue doing that once everything came back normal also or no. So we just went and looked back and said, okay, do we have capital to help us sustain at least for the next 6 to 8 months? And if the answer is yes, let us use this time in order to actually build and update a lot of our existing core tech and products that are there. So yes, we know that we're not going to get business right now. So rather than getting into other sort of things which would be essential category, when you could have come and said that if you're doing fashion, why can't you do essentials? We said that what, let's not do that, because there's a reason why we didn't do essentials, because we don't believe that the unit economics of e-commerce works out for the essentials categories at all. And we don't want to get into a place where it's a further negative contribution margin, and by scaling it, it'll just give you negative. So we decided that we're going to double down on our existing technology. We're going to use this downtime as a way to rebuild a lot of things. We're going to update a lot of things, add new product lines. And I think we went back to the, how Amazon dealt with the .com bust by, creating AWS, and said that, there's a lot of things that, we build internally, which are used in the commerce stack. And, are any of those that, you can outsource and, make that monetizable. So rather than, doing something different, we said we've built a bunch of, let's say, content listing tools that our teams internally use in order to run an e-commerce front end. Why don't we make those tools available for anyone outside to do it, right? So I think that's something that we're actively looking at. in the sense that we just go back to the way AWS was built before Amazon, and we said, there's a lot that we built internally as tools. Let us look at, creating monetizable versions of those tools, and that monetizable version outlasts any such pandemic, right? I mean, it become when the world comes back to normal, those tools can become revenue generating areas for us.
Wonderful, Harsh. That was great. I think we have already extended our time limit, but we'll take some questions very quickly here. I'll start with the first question from Rakesh Sharma. Rakesh, this question is for you, Vikas. I mean, not a question, but Rakesh is saying that he's also from Kolkata and he's very proud of what you and PSAFE team is doing. He would like to connect you with you in detail for national security and personal security. So if you can share your email ID to Rakesh on the Q&A board. Next one is from Rishabh Gupta. How massive will the COVID hit segments such as hospitality and tourism would revive post COVID-19? Also, would it be advisable to start in these sectors? So if we can start from maybe Vikas, if you can just answer this question quickly. You are on mute, Vikas.
I'm not used to the webinars and old school. Okay, I think it's true. The hospitality sector will definitely be hit, especially air travel. Yes, international travel for sure. What will rebound will be the domestic travel. So if you can build something niche and which is far off places and which you can give some kind of experienced travel, I think that's what you can be different from the others. If I talk about me, I'm an avid traveler, and I definitely don't want to fly. If I can do work online, I can do that. But if I want to go on a holiday, I want to go and stay at small Airbnb where the whole place is to myself, and I know about the sanitization. So for hospitality industry, if you want to do something, I'll say that sanitization is a new security. What happened after the 26/11? I think if you can build it up and if you can offer that as a service into hospitality, that you have a sky as the limit for that kind of stuff. But to start something new, you have to really think twice that why you want to go where hundreds of people are already there in that.
Great, thanks a lot. I think we'll take the next question very quickly from Puneet Heda. Puneet has a company called Tracomo.com. We have smart camera for mass detection and monitoring. Looking for some insights. So Vikas, I think you are the best person to answer this question.
Again, this is a new normal. I think the world will be wearing masks for next 18 months for sure. And there will be a lot of compliances and regulations will be there at the public places. For example, airports, for example, big railway stations. So if you can tie up with government or big corporate for their campuses where they have 100,000 plus employees, I think your solution will be definitely will be welcome. So yes, this is a great stuff to do if you can do that. I think nothing like it. You should build up more and do a trial of especially some free trials, and I think you have a future for sure.
Thanks a lot, Vikas. Next question is for Harsh. The question is coming from Nayan Sham Sukha. Will the textile or the fashion industry would be hit because of COVID-19, and how to work on this? Harsh.
So I think definitely, yes, it's going to be hit in the sense that in the short term, because of the fact that this is not an essentials category, I definitely see muted business for these things. However, I think once things open up, you will see it in the medium term back to 70 to 80% up, and I think over time, of course, 100% up as well. But it will definitely be muted for the next 12 to 15 months for sure. I think that these are categories which people are which come under discretionary spending, and that's why I both from a spending perspective as well as just from a going to a store and buying a shirt perspective, I will see that happening. I would see for a fact that e-commerce will take a significant jump in this, because I mean, if people can buy it online, they would not prefer to go to a crowded area to go buy it. But I think in general, again, because of the nature of the category, it will be muted.
Thanks a lot, Harsh. Next question is for Karan. Karan, the question is coming from Deepak Shaw. In a business where the target audience is very defined and maybe not in huge numbers, how can I tackle the problem of still providing them with the same experience of a well-developed app? Um, and I cannot develop an app because it's going to involve a lot of cost. So, Karan, your thoughts on this?
So I'm sorry, I did not get the question. He cannot develop the app, or he said, how can you deliver a good experience?
How can you deliver a good experience without a full-fledged app?
How can you deliver when your market is not defined? So you should not be in the business if your market is not defined, right? So first, I think the foremost thing for any entrepreneur is to define his market. If you can't define your market, then you should not be in business. That'll be the short and
easy
answer.
Thanks a lot. We'll take the last question for the day from Shantanu Datta. We are into linguistic sector. We are dealing with due diligence as well. What will be the situation in case of mergers and acquisition or any other foreign collaboration? Also the future of linguistic sector. Karan, do you think you'll be able to, would you like to answer this question?
Yes. So I hope I'm not on mute.
No, you're not.
So yes, so we are a vernacular company. We have little experience in the linguistic domain. I think the linguistic domain will also have the same impact that the edtech is seeing, because the next wave of internet users are going to come from villages, right? The first billion users are already, the first couple of 100 million users from our country are already there on the internet. So the next wave of billion internet users are going to come from villages. So any company which is dealing into vernacular and linguistic will have a huge opportunity. But since I believe that funding at this moment will take some time, so will the mergers and acquisitions. So everybody is going to wait and watch. They will see how things are shaping up, and then they'll take their own sweet time to take a decision. So you have to be patient and you have to be persistent to survive in this.
Thanks a lot, Karan. I think Deepak, we were not able to understand Deepak's question well, so I'm going to bring him online. Deepak, you can go ahead and ask a question live. You need to unmute your microphone and ask a question, Deepak.
Hi, Karan.
Hi, Deepak. How are you?
Good, Karan. Thank you so much for asking. So, Karan, my question is that in a business, my question was that my target audience is very defined. Okay. So it is a very niche market segment that I'm targeting. For that segment, in order to target that segment and in order to give them the experience of an application, so as the number of customers is very limited. So in order to provide them the experience of an application, how do I go about it? Because an application would come with a lot of expenses. Developing a good application and developing an application which gives you the right experience. So developing that kind of an application, it would involve huge amount of costs. But as my customer segment is very defined, customers would be limited, and the cost acquisition or the cost of giving experience to the customers would go up very hugely. So that is my problem. How do I solve this problem?
So I think Deepak, technology has evolved, to amazing heights. Today, you don't need an app to deliver a good experience to a user. There's something called progressive web applications, right? PWAs, wherein it basically a web version, a website, but which behaves and acts exactly like a mobile app. So if you look at Pariksha on the Google Play Store, we do not have a native app, and we are serving to over 2 million users. Pariksha does not have any native app. What's a web app which behaves and looks exactly? What it gives you is that it brings down your time to go to market, because you're basically, can you hear me? Hello? Yeah. So what it essentially does is that first is it brings down time significantly, your go to market time significantly, and also on the cost front, it is very, very affordable. So basically, you're developing an app which works across the platform, not just on Android, but also on iPhones. So there are other alternatives. Again, having said this, I believe online, whether it is through a native app or whether it is through a progressive web application or through web, this is the most easiest and the most convenient way for any tech company today to reach out to its target market and deliver experience. And there are a lot of freelancers are out there in the world who would build a progressive web app at a very, very affordable price for you.
Thanks a lot, Karan. We'll take the next question very quickly. We'll take 2 more questions. Next is from Shubham Gatani. Shubham, go ahead. You need to unmute your microphone and ask the question.
Hi, this is Shubham Gatani. I'm currently in development stage for my online gaming product, and I was wondering whether it is a good time to seek seed funding, or shall I wait for the economy to kind of recover from the COVID-19 impact?
We can. Vikas, would you like to answer this question?
Oh, no, I think there's a technology, so my two fellow panelists can answer more on technology.
Harsh, why don't we take your input on this question?
I think, again, would want to understand why would you require the amount of funding from a gaming perspective. I think acquisition of customers is probably the only reason why. I would say games these days are definitely in vogue because people are spending a lot more time online and a lot more time, unfortunately doing not too much. But having said that, I think gaming is a very, very difficult segment. There is a fairly large number of games. And the average sort of success rate of games is actually very, very poor. I would say that without spending too much money, of course, you can use either InMobi or sort of Google ads to promote your games through a trickle feed of funding. And I think if you're seeing decent amount of traction on that, then you go ahead and then raise capital. But I wouldn't think, not doing anything would definitely not be an option for me. I think it is the right time for you to at least test out games.
Thanks a lot, Harsh.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we take the last question for the day. This is coming in from Satish Kumar. This is Satish from Warner Park. We are into an on-demand valet parking currently operating in Chennai. How do you think the future will be? Need your insights as we are looking for initial stage funding. Harsh.
So I think valet parking, I'm not too sure. I think, there are two different directions in which most consumers in terms of at least urban mobility is going. I think one is, of course, shared transport, which is your Ola and the Ubers. And I think that in that scenario, valet parking is a problem which you don't face, number one. Number two, I think with COVID specifically, I definitely feel that a lot more car ownership is going to increase, but that is going to be restricted to the more top tier cities. So I would say valet parking is a problem. I'm not sure how deep that problem is from a VC funding perspective. So I would sort of rethink on those lines. Of course, if it is more, valet parking as a concept has been around for a long time. I don't think that there's anything new to it. Most malls give it for a particular charge. Restaurants have it for free and things like that. So, let's actually go back and, try and understand why would you want to do valet parking in a place where urban mobility in terms of shared transportation is only going to increase.
Thanks a lot, Harsh. So I think, we have a lot of questions coming in. Unfortunately, we cannot take all the questions because we have already kind of exceeded our time. But I would like to request all three experts, if you can let all the participants know what is the best way to reach out to you for future questions. Maybe if you can just drop in your contact or LinkedIn in the chat box for everyone. Requesting Karan and Vikas for the same.
Sure.
Harsh, you have to do it to all attendees. It's going to only panelists right now. Okay. All right, 1 second. This is details. 1 second. This is not the correct one. Before we end this broadcast, let me just make sure that I send all these details to you.
So Harsh, I'll reach out to you.
Right. Great. Yes. All right. Thanks a lot. Neha, would you like to close the session? Neha from TiE Kolkata.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Ravi, for conducting a superb session with three of the speakers.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you a lot. Thank you so much. Thank you, Karan. Thank you, Vikas. Thank you, Harsh. We could have gone ahead, but unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time. So
we are getting a lot of questions from these participants, right?
Yeah, we'll try and get these questions and send it to you and see if we can get some response.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vikas. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Harsh. Thank you. Bye-bye.